Number six, the sixth misconception people have about love is that love is effortless, or love is supposed to be effortless. That if you love someone and they love you, and if they're your soulmate and all, that love is not going to require any work, that you don't have to put anything into your relationship. You either love the person or you don't. And the reality of the matter is that the truth is that love always requires work. And that's love in your relationship, not only with your spouse, it's with anyone who you love, right? Even your parents, who you have that natural inborn love, you can increase that love, you can strengthen that love by being obedient to your parents, for example, right? Doing things for your parents, being kind, generous to your parents, or you can decrease that love by being disrespectful to your parents and things like that. And even, subhanAllah, وَلِلَّهِ مَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the highest example, even with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can increase our love for Allah if we are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more obedient we are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more of our life we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we strengthen our love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the more we disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we disregard the obligations and all of that, what we will find is that even with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our love for Allah will weaken. Right? Love requires work. And this is something a lot of young people, they just don't get this. Right? The whole concept of either you love some person or you don't love some person, and they don't realize that love indeed requires a lot of work. A close friend of mine who's a well-known speaker, and I'm not going to say his name, but if I said his name, I would imagine that almost everyone in this room would know who this person is. This brother, may Allah protect him, he was the imam of a community for a long time. So he'd get a lot of phone calls. People would call him with issues and this and that. So one day he gets a phone call, and it's his sister. And it wasn't odd because, like I said, he's the imam. People call him with their problems and all that. So he gets a call, and he picks up the phone, and it's his sister. She says, "Assalamu alaikum." He says, "Wa alaikum assalam." And she goes, "Sheikh, I'm in love with you." And this brother, mashallah, one of the things I say about him is this guy's a boss, right? He's a boss. So you know what he says to her? He goes, "Sister, you're not in love with me. You're in love with your perception of me. You're in love with who you think I am." He says, "If you only could talk to my wife, she would tell you." I'm not done with the story yet. He said, "If you could only speak to my wife, she would tell you how I make her cry every single day." Right? And he slammed the phone. Right? So we assume that because people may be good looking or whatever, like Sheikh Omar Suleiman, obviously, right? And they're a public speaker.
I hate you so much right now. My wife is here, dude. You don't really care. All right, we can go on now. That's something you would do.
Anyway, the point is, perfection doesn't exist, right? Even in people who look amazing, and they may be very amazing people, like I know Sheikh Omar Suleiman. All jokes aside, all jokes aside, I love him for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, moving on. What point was that? Number 5, 4, 6? 6. I promise I'm almost done. I know I'm like 5 minutes over my time. Do you guys allow me to continue?
No.
Okay. Number 7, that true love, the 7th misconception, that true love is unconditional. That if someone truly loves you and you love them, or let's say, and actually once again, another case study, someone came to me, I was talking to this couple, they're having issues with one another, and one of the things that I came to realize is that they had very unrealistic expectations from each other. And then one of the problems was that the sister, when talking to her, I realized that her concept of love is very skewed, because she believes that her husband has to love her no matter what. right? Whether she's a good wife or not, what she does or not, it doesn't matter. This is your soulmate. The love will always be there, right? It does not depend on what you do for your spouse. And same thing, like the same thing happens on the guy's side as well. And especially, I would say especially on the guy's side, where a guy says, you're my wife, you have to love me no matter what, right? Or especially like if you believe you married your soulmate, that because you're my soulmate, this love will be there. It doesn't matter how we treat each other or what we do, that love cannot be broken. And once again, when people begin to see that their love doesn't have that same factor and their spouse doesn't love them unconditionally, they may resort to saying something like, maybe you're not the right person for me. Maybe you're not my soulmate or something like that. Lastly, last issue is that you're always ready for love as long as it's the right person. I'll say it again. You're always ready for love as long as it's the right person. So basically, it doesn't matter where you are in your life, it doesn't matter how much you've done or what you're capable of and all of that. None of that matters. When you find the right person, when you find your soulmate, for example, then that is the right time to be in love, and that is the right time to be in a relationship. You're always ready, as long as it's the right person. And the truth of the matter is, this is one of, and this is, I know I put this at the end, but this is one of the biggest issues that I've seen. You know, about, I would say, 10 or 15 years ago, before I went to Medina, when I remember back in the day when I first started practicing Islam, when there was a revival in the da'wah, there's a lot of speakers coming on the scene and people calling to Islam and all of that. One of the things that a lot of speakers would say, they would always encourage the youth to get married young, right? The scholars and the speakers in America, they would tell young people, like, listen, you're young, there's so much fitna in this society, there's so many issues, so many problems, so many temptations, so one of the things you can do to protect yourself is to get married young. And subhanAllah, because of that whole era, we're actually seeing some of the problems of that era today. And one of the problems is that people jumped into relationships back then unprepared. Right? They were like, okay, the only thing that matters is that I find someone and I get married. So people would get married and they don't understand some basic things that a person should know before they enter into a relationship. For example, just the simple fact or understanding that men and women are different. There are times when women react differently to situations and men react differently. There's nothing you can do to change the person. There's going to be the times when your spouse reacts in a certain way and you just cannot understand it. You have no choice but to accept it. You can bang your head on the wall, you can go crazy, you can pull your hair out, you can do whatever you want, but this is how she understands the situation, right? And so you just have to accept that at certain times. Like the understanding that there are certain differences between men and women. One of the things the scholars of the past, they would say, subhanAllah, is that, and I think this needs to be revived today as well. They would say that it is impermissible for a person to get married until they understand the rulings of marriage and divorce, the fiqh of marriage and divorce, at least the basic fiqh of marriage and divorce. And subhanAllah, how many people today get married and they don't have a clue? A single issue happens and it's like, I don't know what to do, call the imam, start freaking out because they have no idea. And a bigger issue than that is not understanding the rights and responsibilities that you have as a spouse. And subhanAllah, one of the misconceptions brothers have is that my only responsibility, for example, is I have to provide her with food, shelter, and clothing, right? And especially like, it's something I saw from religious brothers who like, you know, maybe are not providing well for their family. And when questions say, listen, what's the deal? Like, why aren't you providing for your family? And she has certain needs and wants and all that kind of stuff. Why can't you provide that? And he says, listen, shar'an, according to the sharia, the only thing the sharia asks of me that I'm required to do is provide her with food, shelter, and clothing. And subhanAllah, that is a very limited understanding of what the sharia requires. Right? So not having the knowledge of what a relationship takes, and this is why one of the things that I always tell anyone who comes to me for advice regarding getting married, I say always, always, always get premarital counseling, right? Always. For me, like if someone wants me to do a nikah or something, I'll be like, listen, I'm not touching your nikah with a 10-foot pole unless you can prove to me that you've gotten some premarital counseling done, that you can show to me that you know what it means to be married. You've had to at least think about some of the situations that will come up when you get married, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. That's my you have all four in one day.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim